Let's talk books. So I'm Mrs. Van. My students call me Mrs. Van Star, and I'm going to talk about books today that I think you're going to love. Now, I left a bunch of them on the floor, so let me grab them. Ta-da! Stack of books. Now, first of all, I want to share some books that were my favorites. And so I'm going to be sharing some books that were my favorites when I was a young reader or much younger than I am right now. And then I'm also going to share new books that have come out that the publisher has sent me and share those with you and what I feel about them. Oh, from Patel's Count. Oh, well, hi, Carrie. I know Carrie. Or I should say Ms. Brown. I know Ms. Brown, so she is from Florida. I hope you have some of your students with you today. All right, so, and I love going to Pinellas County. All right, the first book I want, yes, you won the book. You won books. The first book I want to mention is one called The Clockwork Crow. So this book is a Candlewick book. Anyway, Penguin, Random House, whatever. Clockwork Crow. This book is interesting. So it's a series. So if you like series, you might like this one. It is set in Wales in Victorian times. And so it's got a very interesting, like when I feel like it kind of has a similar feeling to I want to say Chronicles of Narnia, but it's not 100% there, but it does have that feeling, but it's got a totally different feel than that. It's a gothic kind of mystery, spooky, set at Christmas time, like there's snow on the ground, and it's about an orphan. So in that way, it kind of has like a Harry Potter feel, only without the Hogwarts. And the orphan named Saren Reese is sent to this house where family's supposed to be, but when she gets there, they're not there. And she has to like solve this mystery. I would say it's probably ages maybe 9 to 12 in there. Advanced readers, 7 or 8. And it's kind of interesting because it does have that Welsh feel, which is kind of cool, that British thing going on that I like. I have heard some criticism that the character development isn't that deep, but it is a series. And so it's going to develop on more as it goes. So Clockwork Crow, if you like kind of that orphan mystery style, and if you like stuff set in Great Britain, especially in older times, that's cool. So Clockwork Crow. Now, because I mentioned this one, I want to mention my absolute favorite book from when I was a kid, which is like crazy because I love to read, and I've loved to read ever since I can remember. And so saying that something was my favorite is really saying something. So this book is called Mandy, and my mother gave me this copy of it for my birthday a number of years ago, and it's written by Julie Andrews. So if you like Sound of Music or any of her other movies, My Fair Lady, this is her. She's written a couple of books. There it is. This is a first edition. So it was published in the 70s. Let me see if it has a year in it. It was published in 1971. And this book is set in Great Britain, it's set in England, and it's about a girl named Mandy who lives in an orphanage, and she climbs over the orphanage wall, like there's a wall around it, and she climbs over the wall and out into the woods where she finds a cottage that appears to have been abandoned, and she sets out to make it hers. And what happens after that. And I love this book so much. I still love it so much. Part of what I love about it is, I mean, the idea of the cottage, of course, but there are some illustrations. So I've always loved them. They're pen and ink drawings. So let me hold this closer. Pen and ink drawing. This is a drawing of when she's getting in trouble. She's getting in trouble with the matron who's the head of the orphanage. So I believe that they have re-released this book. So I believe that it is available in a reprint now. But Mandy by Julie Edwards. Well, okay, so Julie Andrews Edwards. Her married last name is Edwards. So one thing that's interesting is she's actually written a couple of other books as well besides this. But Mandy, my favorite. And I think these two would be really cool to like read them both and compare them and how you like them. But Clockwork Crow and Mandy. Now, my other suggestions today, I do not have companions for them all. But the next book I have that is another one sent to me by Candlewick Press and Penguin Books is the Interplanetary Expedition of Mars Patel. So this is an interesting one. So this started as a podcast, and this is also a series of books. So the first book was called The Unexplainable Disappearance of Mars Patel, and then it continues here with the Interplanetary Expedition. So what's cool about it is that you can go listen to the podcast. It started as a podcast, and you can listen to the podcast and you can read the book. It's got some interesting design features because like partway through you'll see like it's a little bit different layout kind of than normal. But it is about a boy named Mars Patel, and he is it's a mystery series kind of. I guess that's what I call it, like space mystery, the future, but yeah, so set in the future. And what's cool about it is the way that the book is set up. It's not a normal narrative. Like it's not like you just sit down and read the story straight through. They've got like podcast transcripts in here, emails, newspaper stories, kind of goes back and forth through it. But it is a mystery, but I don't want you to think it's a mystery like the Westing game. It's not like that. It's quite different. And of course, it's got this sci-fi thing. So if that sounds intriguing to you, or you've listened to the podcast, I think you'll definitely love this. The podcast has won a lot of awards. I haven't listened to the podcast in the interest of full disclosure, but I think the book is really quite good. I'm looking at, I think it's probably the same ages as I would recommend Clockwork Crow. So maybe 8 to 12, 9 to 12. I think you'll like it. And if you like this one, and you may actually want to start with the first one, which is The Unexplainable Disappearance of Mars Patel. All right. The next book is, like, let me see, how many more do I have? 4. I have 4 new books and 4 old books left. So I'll do an old one. This book was one of my very, very, very favorites. And I just looked on Amazon. You can find an old copy of it, like a used copy. This book, Star Island, was a set. They made them like, I'm going to recommend another one. And you could see that they're like made the same. They look the same. It was a series of them. And I loved so many that I read. But this book, Star Island, I'm looking to see who printed them. Weekly Reader printed these. They were part of the Children's Book Club. So this was originally published as Star Island Boy. And this book is about a boy who's in foster care. And he gets taken to his name's Larry, and he gets taken out to a foster family that is a couple who live on an island off the coast of Maine. And so, I mean, it's still Maine, but it's an island. It's not the mainland. It's an island called Star Island. And the dad is a lobsterman. And so you can see on the cover, there's Larry and the foster dad out on the boat. And I love this story. I guess you can kind of see I love family stories. I loved books about families. I still do. And Star Island, the conflict in this story is that Larry is very, very worried, of course, that he's going to be sent away again, because that's always been his experience. And he's kind of keeping that fear is like guiding his life all the time, because he's constantly living in this fear. There are no other children in the foster home, and it is a very small island that he lives on. Just talking about it makes me want to read it again. It is so good. So if you can find an old copy of Star Island, highly, highly recommend. Highly recommend. You know what? This book, I lost a lot of my books from when I was a kid. My mom and my stepfather got divorced, and I lost all my books. And like, it was the saddest thing. And I've collected them back as a grown-up. And so I went and rebought this book. That's how much I love it. It doesn't have any illustrations in it. So if you're somebody who really needs pictures, I mean, there's just like a couple little pictures, but it's not a picture book. This is a chapter book. Again, I would say, I mean, it's hard for me to say ages on this book because I still read it and love it. And I'm 55 years old, but I think that it's probably the same, like middle grade. All right, next, another middle grade, and maybe skewing even a little younger. So 8 years old for sure. This book, I love this. It's called Welcome Back, Maida Cohen, and it is by Kate McGovern. So this book is about a girl who has to repeat 5th grade. She has to repeat 5th grade because she doesn't read well. And it's basically undiagnosed dyslexia, really, but she has to repeat the grade, and she makes up this great story about how she has to repeat the grade, that the teacher needed her as a helper because there's like budget cuts, and so they can't afford TAs, and so they have to have kids repeat the grade to help the teacher. I think that was such a clever reason. But she has to repeat the grade, and she's trying really hard to fool people into not realizing that she has this reading problem. And she ends up in this web of lies. And I think it's just so relatable, because I think we've all done that. Like, we've all, in trying to keep our friends, we end up distancing ourselves from our friends because we tell stories that are not true. She gets in and she cannot get out of this web of lies. And I just could relate to it so much. And it costs her friends. It creates all this embarrassment. And I think that I just can so relate to it. This idea of being caught up in the middle of something and it gets out of control. And then you don't know how to get out and you're stuck. And I also think that this idea of students can be very, very bright and still have a learning disability is an important one to explore. So if you like that premise, this is it. She loves to make up stories, and she ends up making up one that's a little bit too big for her. So Welcome Back, Maida Cohen by Kate McGovern. I highly recommend it. It's actually quite a longer read, over 270 pages. So if you like longer reads, this is one that maybe you will like. So far we have a definite win with Welcome Back, Maida Cohen. A really interesting one, sci-fi. Like, if you like Ender's Game, you would like this. And then the Clockwork Crow, if you weren't here in the beginning. Also recommend Clockwork Crow. Orphan English mystery, well, not English, Welsh mystery, set in Victorian times, this mansion, snow-covered, very cool. Perfect. You know what I didn't mention about this one? Perfect holiday read. Christmas vacation, holiday vacation. All right, the next book is also a series, and I think a bunch of kids are going to love this. This book is the Julius Zebra instead of Julius Caesar, like zebra instead of Caesar book. So this is a series. This one is Grapple with the Greeks. There is also Entangled with the Egyptians, and there's another one with the Romans. And these books are really cool. They are about a zebra. They're full of animals. All the animals are anthropomorphized, so they walk and they talk, and they're the characters in the story. What I think is cool about these Julius Zebra books is that they're this blend, right? So you've got regular narrative text, and then you've got these comics in the middle, and they tell the story. Like, you need to read the comics. They're not superfluous. They're not just illustrations. Sometimes they take up a whole 2-page spread, and sometimes they're just interspersed in it, but they're all the way through. So it's kind of a blend. I thought it was really clever, of a blend of a graphic novel and a regular novel. There's a lot of text. One of the things that I really love about it, they're funny. I should mention that. They're funny. One of the things I love is that at the back, they teach you something. So this one, the one Grapple with the Greeks, teaches about Roman numerals. And actually the chapter and page numbers are done in Roman numerals. You could see over here, like a Roman numeral. Maybe you could see Roman numeral instead of Arabic numerals for the pages. And so in the back, there's like extra stuff that you can learn about and do cool stuff. There's also a glossary with a bunch of words that are interesting. Okay, so the other one is Rumble with the Romans. So I love this. Published by Candlewick, the Julius Zebra ones. This one at the back has the stuff about Roman numerals. The Greek one, Entangled with the Greeks, has like how to write your name in hieroglyphics. It has more explanation about Roman numerals as well. And then the art of mummification, super, super, super cool. And then again, like a glossary. So I love it because it's funny. I think that blend of the comics and the narrative text is really amazing. And it's also like just cleverly done. So I loved it. I think on the back it says ages 7 to 10. I think it could skew even younger in strong readers, gifted readers, definitely probably as young as 6, maybe even 5, depending on strength of the reader. I mean, it's got text. It's not a picture book. And then I think it could go up higher than 10, really. So there you go. All right. Another blast from the past. I should have done this on Thursday to be like Throwback Thursday, but it is The Thundering Prairie. This is another one. You can see I rebought it at Half Price Books for $3. So you can find old copies of it for just a couple dollars. It's also that same weekly reader book club. And this one is about a family. I love it. I live in Texas now. We have horny toads. And so there are a couple of illustrations, not very many, but this is about a family, and it's mostly about a boy named Benji. And Benji Bryan, the last name of the family is Bryan. The Bryan family is trying to get a homestead in Oklahoma. And so they're racing in a land rush. And if you've ever heard of the University of Oklahoma, their mascot is the Sooners. And that came from people who were in these land rushes where they would like sneak out ahead. And so you learn from this book that Sooner isn't really very good. You don't want to be a Sooner because you're kind of cheating. But they're trying to get this. And I love this story. And I've always loved the idea of like family stories, of course. But I learned a lot about how those land rushes work, and somebody cheats, and how Benji kind of helps his family with that. And I think that you will also really like it. It's written by Mary Hancock and The Thundering Prairie. So if you can find an old copy of The Thundering Prairie, highly, highly recommend. Highly recommend. All right. I actually did 2 of the new books and skipped an old book. So let me do one more old book. This is easy to find, still in print. The cover is different now. The 21 Balloons by William Payne Dubois. And this book is so cool. It's kind of a fantasy novel. So it's set in like the late 1800s, like Victorian times. And the premise is that Professor William Waterman Sherman has come back from a balloon trip he took. And he took a balloon trip around the world, and he came back, but he came back very differently than he left. And he is speaking to the like travel club that he belongs to. And some people have said that they have a hard time getting into the story. And if they say that, then what I would suggest is skip the first part and go and start where he's actually starts describing his journey. So if you can't get into it, skip ahead to where he starts describing his journey. There are tons of illustrations in this. It is a chapter book. You don't have to get one with yellow pages. I have yellow pages because I bought back the old copy that I had as a kid. So, but there are lots of illustrations. So the premise of the book is that he's gone off on this balloon journey. So he tells everybody about it. This balloon journey is so cool because he ends up landing on the island of Krakatoa. Now, this is a real island that is a volcanic island, and Krakatoa actually erupted. The volcano erupted, and he's got it. So this is almost like a myth because it's like what was going on in the island when the volcanic eruption exploded. I love this book. It is, if you like fantasy, you will like it. It talks about how there's this whole group of people living on Krakatoa that nobody knew about. And all of the families there represent one letter of the alphabet. And they take turns cooking. So like the F family cooks French food. And there's so many clever things about it. It just makes you want to live there. And they have all these cool things that they've designed. So like, here's an example. Where they eat, like in the cafeteria place, there are the stools and tables that come up out of the floor. And the reason that's cool is that then it makes it super easy to clean because then they just crank it, it goes back down, and then the whole place is flat. So you don't have to try to like sweep and mop around the legs of the chairs and tables. So it's just really cool. I love the 21 balloons. It's a Newbery winner. Newbery, so interesting. 1 R, nobody ever spells it correctly. But Newbery winner, the 21 balloons, if you like fantasy, highly recommend. All right, last of the new books. This is called The World's Most Amazing Feats of Engineering, Colossus. So really the title is Colossus. It's written by Colin Hinson and illustrated by Julia Lombardo. And Colossus, if you like engineering, if you like science, if you like technology, you will like Colossus. It goes through cool engineering feats and explains them. So the Panama Canal, the Eiffel Tower, super tall buildings around the world, the Great Wall of China, the Hoover Dam. Now, if you're interested in that, and some of them aren't specific things, like it does like feats of engineering that are railways, right? So if you like engineering, you will like it. I was interested in this one because I'd watched some YouTube videos about it, about these Palm Islands that they've been building in Dubai. Pretty interesting. So if you like these feats of engineering, you will like it. The layout's kind of cool. Like some of them you turn sideways. I learned some interesting stuff. Like I learned from this. I didn't know before I read this. Let me turn it right side up. I didn't know before I read this that they think that the Sphinx was originally painted because they found flecks of colored paint on it. I had no idea that the Sphinx originally was painted. I didn't know that. So I do like this. Like how do buildings stand up to earthquakes? There's a lot of cool stuff. I'm not in love with the illustrations. I don't know why. I mean, they're fine. They're just nothing like, they're not what I normally like in illustrations. And I feel like the illustrations weren't, I'm not saying the quality of the illustration is not great. I just didn't really care for the design of it. Now, I will say that there's one other thing I didn't like, and I'm going to see if I can find a page that has an example of this. But one thing I didn't like is that some of the pages are dark, like there's dark color paper, and then there's print on top of it. This doesn't happen very often in the book, but there are a few places. Here's one. The page is dark and the print is dark, and it makes it really hard to read. So it doesn't happen a lot, but I think you can see it there. So that's one thing I would say. There's that on some places in the book, not very many, but a few, there's a lack of contrast between the color on the page and the type. So I feel like they should have made the type white in those places instead of dark. I think it's a really cool blend of history and the cover. So Teacher Likes Books says likes the cover of this one. Yeah, I like the cover too. And the cover is really, the cover's cool and the title's cool. So Colossus is one of the wonders of the ancient world. It's no longer standing, but it is an engineering marvel. So I think the title is kind of a play on words, because it's like Colossus in the sense of the actual Colossus that stood, but also big, tall stuff that's Colossus. It's a really cool blend of history and engineering. So if you have students that like that, or you like that, I think it's cool. There's really cool trivia in it. And I thought it was a really great read. It's got stuff all the way from Stonehenge to the most modern designs of all. And it even goes further and looks at like, where is engineering going to go? So that's kind of cool. All right. The last book, another one of my very, very, very favorites from when I was a kid. This book is called Baby Island. It's published by Scholastic. I don't even know if it's still in print. I did not try to look this one up. I bought this at a Scholastic book fair when I was like 7 years old. No, I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old when I bought it. It does have illustrations. It's a chapter book, but it has illustrations. And the premise of this story is that Mary and Jean are traveling with their families, and they get shipwrecked with 4 babies, and they have to take care of them. They get shipwrecked on this island. And this is kind of like the Babysitter's Club meets Swiss Family Robinson or Robinson Crusoe. And I just love that. Let's see. Carrie, which book? The Colossus book or Baby Island? Colossus or Baby Island? She wants the name of it. Either one, Colossus or Baby Island. So I love this story. I love these kinds of stories where people have to be resourceful. People have to figure stuff out for themselves, and anything with family I like. So if you like this kind of book, I think you would also like Clockwork Crow. So if you like either of them, these are perfect. So I hope that you have liked some of our books. I linked in the YouTube description, I linked all the new ones, but I think I'll go back and see if I can link to some of the old ones if they're still available. So hopefully you found some great titles here and got some new ideas for upcoming reading. So I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And thank you specifically, Teacher Likes Books and Carrie, for joining in today, and any of you else who were there. It was nice to see you and share books with you today.